Job seekers, have you ever turned down a job or walked out of an interview because of something the interviewer said or did? Story 1. Yeah, I was doing a phone interview with a company in the Florida Keys. My interviewer told me the salary, not nearly enough to pay for the cost of living, said I would always have to work weekends and I would never, ever get a raise. Ever. Then he tells me that if I am considered one of the top 3 candidates, I would be expected to fly out to Florida on my own dime for an in-person interview. Then he asked me if I were picked for the top 3, when would be the soonest I could fly out to Florida. I started explaining to him that I needed to give 2 weeks notice to get a day off, so 2 weeks from now? Then he said, well, what about Wednesday? It was Friday, so I was like, 5 days from now? When he said, yes, I started laughing and said, are you kidding me? Dude got mad and snapped at me, yes, I'm serious. We're trying to get this position filled as fast as possible. We don't have time to wait 2 weeks. If you don't think you can fly down here sooner rather than later, then maybe you're not the right candidate for this position. To which I replied, yeah, you're right. I don't think I'm the right candidate for this position. My interviewer immediately softened and started saying stuff like, well, wait a minute, let's talk about this. We seem to have gotten off track. Tell me more about your experience. And when I kept saying, look, I am clearly not a good choice for your company, he kept cutting me off and insisting that we continue the interview. A few days later, I got a call from the company again informing me that I was one of the top 3 candidates. Congratulations, way to go. So when should they expect me for my interview? Cue another 5-ish minutes of insisting that I didn't want the job before finally cutting them off and hanging up. I am getting such huge scam vibes from this. What kind of position was this? It sounds like they were pulling out all the intimidation stops they could to just prevent paying this person their worth. So far, nothing about this job description and what they were offering as compensation was the least bit appetizing. Why were they trying to hook this guy so bad? Story 2. The interview was about 4 or 5 months ago, but I remember there seemed to be a red flag every few minutes or so of her talking. You cannot do any freelancing after hours, even if it's for free. I don't need you staying up until midnight and coming in tired. In my head, I wanted to say, but what if I'm up to midnight having spicy time every night? Would that be okay? The guys here have no idea about attention to detail. I think that's a guy thing, but I can't trust them to not make mistakes. When I asked why the previous designer was leaving, it's just time for her to move on. I mean, she gets here at 9 a.m. and won't even say good morning to those around her. Mind you, I don't want people chatting and looking at social networks even at lunchtime. That's why I've got full view of everyone's workstations. Slagging off about her employees in general, e.g. the studio manager with teenage daughter problems. I'm sure there were other things I've forgotten because I remember being so incredulous. But my favorite red flag interview question? I always ask, what would your employees say is the best thing about working here? Good employers with good environments can instantly respond with favorable responses and be enthusiastic and credible with their responses. This woman? She paused. She continued pausing. It was like I'd asked her the last question to win $1 million. Her brow furrowed, and finally she responded with, well, the freelancers I get in say it's a nice quiet place to work. Seriously, woman? You can't even answer off the top of your head? Freelancers are not your regular employees. And that's what you see as the most enticing benefit of working here? That's really good advice. When you're on an interview and they ask if you have any questions for them, don't waste that opportunity. There's plenty of questions you can answer. You gotta remember, not only are they trying to figure out if you're a good fit for them, you have to figure out if they'll be a good fit for you. A quick Google search will find you a lot of questions that will provide valuable insight into the company. And it's not just about the answer, it's about how they answer. Story 3. I was desperately hunting for a job during college and found myself answering ads in the paper. I responded to a few vague, no experience necessary ads and was surprised to find that all 3 of them were for Kirby vacuums. Annoyingly, none of them admitted to it over the phone, and I wouldn't find out until arriving for the interview and wasted my time and gas. I decided that it was likely all the vague ads were commission-only scams and responded to an ad ad looking for a secretary. They promptly scheduled an interview, and I arrived to find they were Kirby vacuums. They justified themselves by saying that I would be filing some paperwork during the course of sales, so it somehow was a secretary position. I walked out. I responded to an ad that clearly stated they were looking for people to help load and unload electronics at a place called Aloha Sound Systems. When I got there, they too were Kirby. They met me with a lame excuse about occupying a building that had once housed Aloha Sound Systems, so they were somehow justified in using their name, and that vacuums were electronics, so they never lied. I walked out. I was mostly through college and had some limited knowledge of computer animation, and took a chance and responded to an ad looking for an assistant to help with some animating. I drove out for the interview and was shooting the breeze with the secretary, and we came to the series of job interview bait and switches Kirby had pulled on me, and how happy I was to see an ad for a job that couldn't possibly be Kirby. I looked over, and the secretary was staring at me, red-faced and tight-lipped, and I just said, "No possible way," as she launched into a hasty justification about being allowed to make multimedia presentations to help me sell vacuums. It was like a scene out of a sitcom. What is the deal with this company? How are all of these positions just for the same cruddy company? I think the only person that isn't interviewed for a sales position is the person that has to come up with all these different angles for ads. Forget one person, this has to be a team of marketers. Story 4. Yes, interviewer was 25 minutes late, was rude and crabby, asked questions that were extremely irrelevant, more so than normal job questions. The interviewer had no knowledge of the job or technologies involved, misspoke and used incorrect words to describe things. Their leadership style was basically, do what I say or leave. They also had a strict dress code of suits and ties, even though the department was not customer-facing at all. I asked why. She said that wearing casual clothes is a bad practice because employees wouldn't be serious and get work done. When I asked her what she thought would happen, she basically, in so many words, said we would all just forget we're at work and goof off all day because we would be relaxed. She was dressed like dirt, for your information, wearing a muumuu, stated they wanted someone who had 5+ years experience with Windows 8, 8.1, and MS Office 2013 and OneDrive. When I explained that these technologies had only been out recently at the time, she became furious and stated plenty of people applied with more experience than she was asking. So basically, this lady was incompetent. Not sure how she got the job, but she basically told me there was no work-life balance, no teamwork or camaraderie, and she knew jack all about software dev. This is my most upvoted comment ever. Thanks, everyone. Story 5. Yes, the temp agency I work for sent me to interview at this tech place in the summer of 2013. And from the moment I set foot in the building, everyone there was super rude to me. The security guard didn't even greet me when I came in. She just barked at me that I can't bring my purse inside and that I need to go move my car to the guest lot, which turned out to be literally a quarter mile away. So I moved my car, leave my purse in it, and trudge back to the building in 105-degree Texas heat in my now damp business casual outfit, only to be greeted by a sour-faced Taiwanese lady who scowled at me and told me to follow her and hurry up. She gave me 2 boards to solder, and when she graded the first board and told me sharply that it was no good, I failed the second board on purpose. No good in my backside. I used to solder for Hitachi. I'm damn good too, but this place's equipment was something out of a third world country. Right after I left, I called the temp agency and told them to find me something else, because I'd rather gargle hot garbage juice than work at that dump. None of the employees were smiling, the place was dirty and run down, and the whole atmosphere was just depressing and suffocating. Story 6. Oh yeah, when I was 20, this woman tried to hire me for juggling lessons for her 17-year-old autistic son. I perform at a music therapy event every year and do a group lesson for all the kids, most of which suffer from some disability. So I drive 45 minutes to her house, and she starts talking about how this is a full-time job. We need you to be on call all the time. You're going to have to stop taking college classes. Your duties include helping him wipe wipe and giving him a bath every night. The pay is $8 an hour. Yeah, no thanks, lady. Ooh, that's bad. That's like finding hidden fees in your bill from Ticketmaster, only the number goes down instead of up. How does juggling lessons include wiping and giving a bath? They didn't want a teacher, they wanted an au pair. And $8 an hour? Not even adding another digit to the hourly rate is gonna change how awful this job is. Story 7. Several times now, actually. The most hilarious one? There was a promotions company that needed a graphic designer to add to their team of 4. We were walking and interviewing so they could show me the office, and they got to where I would be working. It was a closet. There were 4 people in there, desks pushed along every wall. The back of their chairs touched. They were so crammed close together. Their Mac screens were edge to edge all the way around. There were no lights. I repeat, literally no lights. They looked up at us as we opened the door with giant Mac screen glowing eyeballs. It was the creepiest and most bizarre workspace I'd ever seen. When we started walking back to the interviewer's office, I basically said I had to go. They offered me the job the next day, and I said no. Story 8. I was brought into an interview with the information that the company was looking to hire administrative assistants. I sat through about 5 minutes of my interview, and then the interviewer said to me, "Before we get started, how quickly can you purchase a vehicle?" Confused, I explained, "I am currently unemployed, so purchasing a vehicle is out of the question. Does the administrative position require errands as part of the duties?" Interviewer says, "Oh, we hired the admin positions already, but we felt you would be perfect for sales." I let them know they had completely wasted my time and it was incredibly unprofessional and left. Story 9. Yep, for a local Village Voice type of newspaper in my hometown. The editor was just a complete condescending jerkwad. He said he didn't believe my resume. I was pretty young and had done a lot as I had been supporting my family since my mother became ill when I was 14. He told me to write 21 questions right in front of him about the position. It was a marketing position that we had gone over for about an hour already, and then he would read the questions. I reluctantly started to write and he said, "Just because you have experience doesn't mean you're not a loser without a degree." Walked out. And yet you'll still have people say, "Oh, no one wants to work anymore." There are other reasons for the lack of jobs being filled in some places. Being an employer does not mean taking advantage of a job market to basically have slaves. Being an employer does not mean the free ability to take out your emotional damage onto your employees because they have nowhere else to go and need a paycheck. This guy was just on a power trip. Story 10. Hell yeah. Early in my IT career, I was applying for an hourly help desk. I was advised that up until 40 hours a week, we were hourly and would be paid for hours worked, but that when we were required to work overtime, we would be paid as salaried employees for over 40 hours. They explained that they weren't profitable enough to pay more. So I advised them that it was against the law to have policies like that and got up and left. Story 11. As a very naive 18-year-old, I responded to an ad that said they were looking for masseuses and were willing to train. I gave them a call, and the woman I spoke with was very nice and said lots of positive things about the job. She must have caught on to how clueless I was, though, because at one point she just kind of bluntly asked, "You do know this job involves spicy time, right?" Flustered, I thanked her and hung up. Story 12. I had an interview with a marketing company. I walked into their office, and on the wall it said Marketing Company. That was not their name. Everything looked like it had been set up the night before. At the end of the interview, the interviewer gave me a business card. Not his business card, but the business card of some other company that used to have his current phone number. He crossed out their name and put his own. Too many scams! I've interviewed for jobs over online that were just complete scams. They didn't even have a Zoom meeting. They just asked me to fill out a questionnaire. That's a big red flag. Another big red flag is that after I filled out the questionnaire, they wanted to offer me the job on the spot. No employer will do this. There's forms you have to fill out. It's unfortunate how people will prey on people who need work. Story 13. The interviewer told me if I wanted to work there, I'd have to violate the legal binding confidentiality of my previous employer. I promptly stood up, shook his hand, and said, "Guess I don't want to work here." About 10 years later, the same guy shot/unalived his wife and a passerby in a parking garage. Story 14. The interviewer didn't know what position I was applying for. We had just talked for 15 minutes. Then he quoted me an hourly rate way less than what was advertised, then tried to get me to sign a piece of paper where the hourly wage was blank so he could fill it in later.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.